The wind screamed across the frozen wasteland like a living thing trying to kill everything it touched. Reed Callahan pulled his thermal coat tighter and squinted through the blizzard. His scanner beeped weakly in his gloved hand. The readings made no sense. Organic matter this far from the outpost? Impossible. He trudged forward anyway. After 6 months alone on Frost 7, Reed trusted his instincts more than common sense. The mining company thought he was crazy for working claims this deep in the ice fields. Maybe they were right, but crazy paid better when you found the good deposits. The scanner's beeping grew louder. Reed climbed over a ridge of blue ice and stopped dead. 3 enormous objects sat in a crater, partially buried in snow. They looked like massive crystals, each one taller than Reed himself. Smooth surfaces caught the dim light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Beautiful. Valuable, too, if they were some kind of rare mineral. Reed approached carefully. His boots crunched on fresh powder. Up close, the objects looked less like crystals and more like eggs, huge eggs with shells that seemed to pulse with inner warmth. "No way," Reed whispered, his breath frosted in the air. He reached out with one hand. The moment his glove touched the nearest egg, heat flooded through the material. The whole surface began to glow, cracks spider-webbed across the shell. Reed jumped back. Oh, hell. The egg shook, pieces of shell fell away. Something inside moved. A head pushed through, covered in gleaming scales the color of charcoal. Yellow eyes blinked at Reed. The creature opened its mouth and made a sound like breaking glass mixed with a cat's purr. A dragon, a real dragon. The other 2 eggs were hatching now. Reed watched in shock as 3 baby dragons struggled free of their shells. One had scales like copper left in a fire. Another's hide shimmered like frost on a window. They were each the size of a large dog, with wings folded against their backs and tails that whipped through the snow. The first one, the dark-scaled hatchling, stumbled toward Reed on wobbly legs. It pressed its head against his knee and made that strange purring sound again. "Easy there," Reed said softly, his heart hammered. Dragons were extinct, everyone knew that. They'd been gone for thousands of years. The galaxy considered them the most dangerous predators that ever lived. And 3 of them were currently trying to climb up his legs. Reed's practical mind kicked in. The temperature was dropping fast. These babies were warm now, but night on Frost 7 could freeze metal solid. They needed shelter. He looked down at the 3 dragons. The dark one met his eyes with an intelligence that made Reed's skin prickle. It understood somehow. They all did. "All right," Reed said. "Come on." He turned and started walking back toward his shelter. The dragons followed without hesitation, staying close to his legs. The copper-scaled one kept trying to catch snowflakes with its tongue. The frost-colored hatchling walked with careful, measured steps. Reed's bunker sat 2 kilometers away, built into the side of a glacier. It took an hour to reach it with the dragons in tow. They struggled through deep snow but never stopped following. By the time Reed got the door open, all 3 were shivering. The bunker was small but warm. Reed guided the dragons inside and sealed the entrance. Heat from the thermal generator filled the space. His living area, storage room, and equipment bay suddenly felt crowded with 3 dragon hatchlings exploring everything. Reed pulled off his coat and sat down hard on his bunk. What had he just done? Hatching dragons, bringing them to his shelter. The Galactic Council had protocols for this kind of thing, strict ones. He should report it immediately. The dark-scaled dragon climbed onto the bunk beside him. It curled against his side and closed its eyes. The other 2 dragons piled on too, creating a warm heap of scales and gentle breathing. Reed felt something crack open inside his chest. He'd been alone for so long, not just on Frost 7, but for years before that. Ever since the colony disaster, ever since he lost everyone. These creatures trusted him completely. They'd bonded to him the moment they hatched. He could feel it somehow, a connection that went deeper than words. "I'm probably going to regret this," Reed muttered. He pulled up his communication screen and stared at the emergency contact for Council authority. His finger hovered over the button. The dark dragon made a small sound in its sleep. Its tail curled around Reed's wrist. Reed closed the communication screen. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I'm definitely going to regret this." Outside, somewhere in orbit above the planet, automated monitoring stations recorded an unusual energy signature. The readings triggered alerts in systems designed to watch for specific threats. Data packets began traveling across the galaxy toward Council headquarters. But inside the bunker, Reed didn't know any of that yet. He sat with 3 baby dragons sleeping against him and wondered what he was supposed to feed them in the morning. The galaxy would have answers soon enough. Reed just hoped he could handle the questions. 3 weeks changed everything. Reed stared at the remains of his food supplies and did the math again. It still didn't work. The dragons ate more than he did, a lot more, and they were growing fast. The dark-scaled one, who Reed had started calling Flint, was already the size of a small pony. Cinder, the copper-colored dragon, had grown just as large. Frost, the pale one with scales like ice crystals, was slightly smaller but just as hungry. "We need to hunt," Reed announced. 3 dragon heads turned toward him in perfect unison. They understood now, not just simple commands but complex ideas. Reed would talk through his plans while working, and the dragons would listen with focused attention. It was remarkable, also terrifying. Reed gathered his gear and opened the bunker door. The dragons bounded outside into the snow, spreading their wings and making excited noises. Over the past weeks, they'd started flying. Short distances at first, then longer ones. Now they could soar across the ice fields with a grace that made Reed's throat tight. He led them toward the thermal vents 3 kilometers north. Ice creatures gathered there, big slow things with thick fur and meat that could feed dragons for days. Flint spotted the herd first. The dragon dropped into a glide, circling lower. Cinder and Frost followed. Reed expected them to attack immediately, driven by hunger and instinct. Instead, all 3 dragons landed near Reed and waited. "You want me to teach you?" Reed asked. Flint made a low rumbling sound and tapped the snow with one claw. So Reed taught them how to approach downwind, how to separate one animal from the herd, how to make a clean kill without waste. The dragons absorbed every lesson. By the 3rd hunt, they worked together like a trained unit. Reed watched them bring down an ice beast twice their size using coordinated attacks. Pride swelled in his chest. These weren't mindless monsters. They were smart, creative. They cared about doing things right. Back at the bunker, Reed butchered the kill. While the dragons watched, he explained each cut, why certain parts stayed fresh longer, how to preserve meat in the cold. Flint paid especially close attention, occasionally making soft noises that sounded almost like questions. "You really want to know everything, don't you?" Reed said. Flint bumped his head against Reed's shoulder. It had become the dragon's way of saying yes. That night, Reed sat with his tablet while the dragons curled around him. He pulled up old files he'd saved from his military days. Information about dragon history. Most of it was propaganda, he'd realized. Stories meant to justify what the Council's founders had done. But some details seemed real. Dragons had built cities, developed technology, lived peacefully until the younger species grew afraid of their power. "Is that what you would have become?" Reed asked quietly. "Philosophers and builders." Frost raised her head and made a sound like wind chimes. Reed's communication panel beeped. He'd been ignoring it for days, but the alert was flagged priority urgent. He pulled up the message. Official Council transmission. Research vessel in orbit. They detected the Dragon energy signatures. A team was landing tomorrow to investigate. Reed's blood went cold. "We have visitors coming," he told the dragons. All 3 sat up, alert. They'd learned to read his moods perfectly. Reed spent the night planning. He couldn't hide 3 dragons the size of horses. Fighting wasn't an option either. The Council had weapons that could crack planets, but maybe he could convince them, show them what the dragons really were. The research ship landed at dawn. 6 people in Council uniforms hiked across the ice toward Reed's bunker. He met them outside with the dragons sitting calmly behind him. The lead researcher stopped dead. Her scanner fell from her hand. "Sir, you need to step away from those creatures immediately," she said. Her voice shook. "No," Reed said simply. "You don't understand. Those are dragons, apex predators. They're classified as extinction-level threats." "They're children," Reed corrected, "and they're under my protection." Another researcher raised a weapon. Flint moved faster than Reed thought possible, positioning himself between the gun and Reed. The dragon's eyes blazed, but he didn't attack, just stood there, protective and still. "Lower your weapon," the lead researcher ordered her team member. She studied Flint with wide eyes. "It's defending him." "They've bonded to me," Reed explained. "Since they hatched, they're not dangerous if they're raised right, given respect, treated like the intelligent beings they are." "The law is clear," the researcher said. "All dragon specimens must be contained in secure facilities for everyone's safety." "They're not specimens, they're people." "That's not your decision to make." A larger ship appeared in the sky. Military vessel. Reed recognized the profile. They'd sent backup, probably expected trouble. The researcher activated her comm. "This is Dr. Hayes, confirming dragon presence. 3 juveniles. Recommend immediate containment protocol." Reed looked at the dragons. Flint met his eyes. The trust there nearly broke him. "I'm sorry," the researcher said to Reed. She actually sounded like she meant it. "But you're in violation of the Preservation Act. The dragons will be taken to a research facility. You'll be detained for unlawful interaction with prohibited species." "And if I refuse?" More soldiers were landing now, surrounding the area. Heavy weapons, containment nets. Flint growled low in his throat. Cinder and Frost moved closer to Reed. "Please don't make this violent," Dr. Hayes said. Reed made his choice. "Run," he told the dragons. They moved as one, launching into the air. Reed sprinted for the ice caves he'd found weeks ago, the ones that tunneled deep into the glacier. The dragons circled once, then dove after him. Behind them, soldiers shouted orders. The hunt had begun. The ice caves swallowed them whole. Reed ran through tunnels he'd mapped during his first month on Frost 7. The dragons followed close, their claws clicking on the frozen stone. Behind them, boots pounded and voices echoed. The soldiers were coming fast. "Deeper," Reed gasped. "There's a chamber system about 2 kilometers down." Flint took the lead, his dark scales nearly invisible in the dim light. Cinder and Frost flanked Reed, keeping him between them, protective, always protective. The tunnel opened into a massive cavern. Reed had discovered it while tracking mineral deposits, but he'd never explored the full depth. Now he had no choice. He activated his helmet light and swept the beam across the space. Then stopped breathing. The cavern walls were covered in carvings. Intricate designs showing dragons in flight, dragons building structures, dragons. Gathered in what looked like schools or libraries, this wasn't a natural cave. It was a city, an ancient dragon city carved into the glacier itself. "By the stars," Reed whispered. Frost approached the nearest wall and made a sound like singing. She touched her snout to a carving of a dragon that looked remarkably similar to her. The image seemed to shimmer under her touch. Above them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Reed heard drill equipment starting up. They were cutting through the ice to reach the cavern. "We need to keep moving," Reed said. But Flint wasn't listening. The dragon had found something in the center of the chamber, a raised platform with objects arranged on top. Reed hurried over and found data crystals, the kind ancient civilizations used for information storage. His hands shook as he picked one up. The crystal activated at his touch, projecting images into the air. Dragons, hundreds of them, but these weren't monsters attacking cities. They were teaching, building, creating art and music and technology far beyond what the current galaxy had achieved. Another crystal showed different images, ships appearing in dragon skies, weapons firing, dragons falling. And throughout it all, the dragons never fought back. They retreated, they hid, they chose extinction over violence. "They murdered you," Reed said softly. "The Council's founders hunted you down because they were afraid, and you wouldn't even defend yourselves." Cinder pressed against Reed's side. The dragon was trembling. A massive crack echoed through the cavern. The ceiling shuddered. The soldiers had broken through. Reed grabbed as many data crystals as he could carry and stuffed them in his pack. "We're not done yet. The galaxy needs to know the truth." He found a communication terminal built into the wall. Ancient dragon technology, but the principles were universal. Reed pulled out his tablet and started connecting cables. His fingers flew across the interface while the dragons formed a protective circle around him. The first soldiers dropped into the cavern, weapons ready. They spread out, searching for targets. "There," someone shouted. Energy weapons charged with high-pitched whines. Flint roared. The sound shook ice from the walls. He reared up, wings spread wide, and breathed fire across the cavern entrance. Not at the soldiers, but above them, creating a wall of flame that made them fall back. Reed worked faster. He'd cracked the dragon communication system. It was designed to broadcast across vast distances. Perfect. Come on," he muttered. Frost created barriers of ice at the tunnel entrances. Cinder used precise fire blasts to collapse minor passages, controlling the soldiers' approach routes. They weren't trying to hurt anyone, just buying time. Reed's tablet beeped. Connection established. He was patched into every major communication network in the galaxy, every news feed, every public channel. He hit upload and started broadcasting everything. The images from the data crystals, the truth about dragon history, his own testimony about Flint, Cinder, and Frost. "My name is Reed Callahan," he said into his tablet's camera. "I'm broadcasting from Frost 7. 3 weeks ago I found dragon eggs. I watched them hatch. I've lived with these dragons every day since. They're not monsters. They're intelligent, compassionate, and peaceful. Everything the Council told you about dragons is a lie built on genocide." The data streamed out, unstoppable now, reaching every corner of galactic civilization. More soldiers poured into the cavern. An officer stepped forward, his weapon aimed at Reed. "Cease transmission immediately," the officer commanded. "You're spreading dangerous propaganda." "I'm spreading truth," Reed shot back. "And you can't stop it, it's already out there." The officer's expression hardened. "Then you've left us no choice. Fleet Command has authorized orbital strikes. This entire cavern complex will be destroyed in 20 minutes. Surrender the dragons now, or you all die together." Reed looked at Flint. The dragon met his eyes with perfect understanding. They could run deeper into the caves, but the orbital weapons would collapse everything. No escape. "I won't let them take you," Reed said quietly. Flint made a sound like agreement. Reed turned back to the officer. "Do what you have to do, but the truth is already spreading. People across the galaxy are watching this right now. They're seeing what dragons really are, what you're really doing, genocide, again." The officer's jaw tightened. "You're gambling with your life." "I'm gambling with something bigger, the galaxy's conscience." Above the planet, Reed's broadcast reached thousands of ships, millions of devices. People on 100 worlds stopped what they were doing and watched. They saw the ancient dragon. Cities, the peaceful history. 3 young dragons protecting a lone human with carefully controlled power. The narrative was changing, question by question, heart by heart. The officer received a transmission. He listened, his face going pale. "Fleet Command is holding the strike order," he said slowly. "Civilian ships are jumping into orbit, hundreds of them. They're demanding we stand down." Reed allowed himself one breath of hope. The galaxy was watching, and maybe, just maybe, it was time for things to change. The galaxy fractured in hours. Reed sat in the Dragon Cavern, monitoring the flood of transmissions on his tablet. Every major news network carried his broadcast. Discussion forums exploded with debate. Government channels lit up with emergency sessions. The truth about dragons spread like fire through dry grass. Dr. Hayes entered the cavern alone, hands raised peacefully. The soldiers had pulled back to the entrance, confused by conflicting orders from above. She approached Reed carefully. "The Council wants you to stop broadcasting," she said. "Not a chance. They're threatening military action against any ship that interferes. This could start a war." Reed looked up from his tablet. "Then maybe it's a war worth having. How long were you planning to keep this secret? Another 1,000 years? Forever?" Hayes sat down on a chunk of ice. She looked exhausted. "I didn't know, most of us didn't. The historical records in the Council archives are heavily edited. We believed the official story. Dragons were monsters. Extinction was necessary for galactic safety." "And now?" She watched Flint, who was examining the wall carvings with intense focus. "Now I don't know what to believe. That dragon should have killed half my team. Instead, he created a fire wall that didn't hurt anyone, just gave you time." Cinder approached Hayes slowly. The dragon stopped just out of reach and made a questioning sound. "He's asking if you're a threat," Reed translated. He'd learned to read their vocalizations. "No," Hayes said softly to the dragon. "I'm not, I promise." Cinder considered this, then moved closer and touched his nose to her hand. Hayes caught her breath but didn't pull away. The dragon's scales were warm beneath her fingers. "Incredible," she whispered. Reed's tablet exploded with alerts. "We've got a problem. Council hardliners are pushing for immediate action. They want to make an example, show that defying Council authority has consequences." "What kind of action?" "The kind that ends with this planet cracked open." More transmissions poured in, but these were different. Citizens from dozens of species broadcasting their own messages, demanding the Council stand down, calling for new hearings on dragon history, questioning other official narratives. A face appeared on Reed's screen. An older alien with blue skin and 4 arms, wearing the robes of a Council representative. "Mr. Callahan, I am Representative Dov from the Outer Rim Coalition. I'm speaking for myself, not the Council. What you've revealed has shaken many of us. We request permission to send a diplomatic team, not soldiers, actual diplomats who want to understand." Reed glanced at the dragons. All 3 were listening. "What do you think?" he asked them. Flint tilted his head, considering, then made a sound that Reed had learned meant cautious agreement. "All right," Reed told the representative. "But small group, no weapons. The dragons decide if you're welcome." "Understood. We'll arrive within hours." The transmission ended. Hayes stood up. "I should inform my team. Some of them will want to meet the diplomats. Others will probably try to arrest everyone." "Which side are you on?" Reed asked. She looked at Cinder, who was now showing her the wall carvings. "I became a scientist to discover truth, not to enforce comfortable lies. I'm on the side of truth." Hayes left. Reed continued broadcasting, adding new information as he decoded more data crystals. Dragon technology, philosophy, art. Every piece of evidence showed a civilization built on knowledge and peace. Frost made an urgent sound. Reed looked up to see her staring at a section of wall that was beginning to glow. Ancient systems activating after thousands of years of dormancy. A hologram materialized. A dragon, massive and scarred, with scales like polished silver. The image was a recording, but it felt alive. "If you are seeing this, my kind has fallen," the holographic dragon said. Its voice resonated through the cavern. "We chose not to fight. Violence begets violence, and we refuse to become the monsters they feared. But we leave this record for those who come after. Truth has a way of surviving, even when civilizations do not." The hologram shifted, showing images of dragon culture at its height. Cities that touched the clouds, ships that sailed between stars, schools where young dragons learned philosophy and science. "We were not perfect," the recorded dragon continued. "But we tried to be good. We tried to show the younger species that power without wisdom leads only to destruction. They did not listen. Fear won. It usually does, but perhaps someday someone will find this message and understand. Perhaps they will choose differently." The hologram faded. Reed stared at the empty space where it had been. His throat felt tight. "I'll try," he said to the vanished image. "I promise I'll try." Flint pressed against Reed's side. Cinder and Frost joined them. The three dragons and the one human sat together in the ancient city, surrounded by evidence of a civilization that chose peace over survival. Outside, the diplomatic ships were arriving, but so were council military vessels, the hardliners refusing to accept change. The space around Frost 7 filled with ships from every faction, armed vessels, civilian transports, news crews, protesters, all converging on one frozen planet. Reed checked his broadcasts. Billions of views now, the galaxy couldn't look away. His tablet chimed with a priority message, this one from the Council's highest authority. "Reed Callahan, you are hereby ordered to cease all transmissions and surrender the dragon specimens. Failure to comply will result in planetary bombardment. You have 6 hours to respond. This is not negotiable." Reed read the message twice, then he looked at the dragons. "Seems we've got a decision to make," he said. "Keep fighting or back down." Flint walked to the communication terminal. The dragon placed one claw on the controls and looked back at Reed. His meaning was clear. "Keep fighting." "Yeah," Reed said. "That's what I thought too." He sent his response to the council, just 2 words. "Come try." The 6-hour deadline burned away like ice under a sun. Reed stood at the cavern entrance, watching ships maneuver in orbit through his tablet's external feed. The Council military fleet held formation on one side. Civilian vessels clustered on the other, forming a ragged barrier. In the middle, diplomatic ships tried desperately to negotiate. None of it was working. "Fleet Command has armed weapons," Dr. Hayes reported over comm. She'd stayed with her team at the surface camp, feeding Reed information. "They're targeting the cavern complex. Orders are final." Reed's hands tightened on the tablet. Beside him, the 3 dragons waited. They'd grown even larger over the past weeks. Flint's wings could spread wide enough to cast shadows across the entire chamber. Cinder could breathe fire hot enough to melt stone. Frost had learned to create ice structures with architectural precision. They were magnificent, powerful enough to fight back. They wouldn't, though. Reed knew that now. They'd absorbed the lessons from the ancient recordings. Violence begets violence. The old dragons had understood that. These young ones did too. "I won't let them kill you," Reed said. Flint made a sound like distant thunder. Agreement. Protection went both ways. The comm crackled. "Reed, this is Representative Dov. We've convinced some fleet crews to stand down, but not enough. The hardliners are preparing to fire. You need to evacuate now." "Where exactly would we go?" Reed asked. "The civilian ships will take you. We can protect you." "Until when?" "Until the Council sends a bigger fleet. Until they decide the civilians are also threats." Silence on the other end. "No," Reed continued. "We make our stand here. Let the galaxy see what the Council really is." He cut the connection and turned to the dragons. "I need you 3 to trust me. Can you do that?" All 3 dragons made sounds of affirmation. Flint stepped forward and lowered his head until his eyes were level with Reed's. "When the shooting starts, I want you to fly out," Reed said. "Show yourselves to every ship up there. Let them see you clearly. But don't attack. No matter what, defend if you have to, but don't kill. Can you do that?" Flint hesitated. Reed could see the conflict in those intelligent eyes. Protecting Reed meant fighting, but Reed was asking them to hold back. "Trust me," Reed repeated. Finally, Flint made a sound of agreement. Cinder and Frost echoed it. The tablet screamed an alert. Weapons were firing. Reed ran for the communication terminal. The dragons spread their wings and launched upward, bursting from the cavern into the sky. Plasma bolts streaked down from orbit, targeting the ice around the cave system. Reed's fingers flew across the controls. He activated every broadcast channel at once, maximum range. His face appeared on screens across the galaxy. "This is Reed Callahan. The Council fleet is firing on an unarmed human and 3 juvenile dragons. We have not attacked anyone. We have only shared truth. Watch what happens next. Watch what your government does to those who question it. The first plasma bolt hit the glacier. Ice exploded into steam. The cavern shook violently. Above, the dragons emerged into the sky. Ships from every faction had cameras pointed at the planet. Billions watched as Flint, Cinder, and Frost flew in perfect formation, their scales catching the light. They were impossible to miss, impossible to misunderstand. 3 young dragons, beautiful and terrible, flying with grace that took the breath away. The fleet fired again. Frost reacted first. She created a barrier of ice in the air, intercepting the plasma bolts before they could hit the planet. The ice shattered into steam, but the shots were stopped. Cinder and Flint joined her, working together to create shields of ice and fire. They were defending, not attacking. Every ship with cameras could see the difference. In the civilian fleet, something shifted. One ship moved, positioning itself between the military vessels and the planet. Then another. Then dozens more. They weren't armed. They couldn't fight, but they could bear witness. They could make the Council shoot through them first. On the Council's flagship, commanders watched their view screens in growing horror. Public opinion was turning in real time. Their own crews were hesitating, questioning orders. "Sir, we're receiving thousands of transmissions," a communications officer reported. "Citizens demanding we cease fire. Some of our own member species are threatening to withdraw from the Council." The fleet commander stared at the image of 3 dragons shielding a planet with their own bodies. Not attacking, just defending. "Hold fire," he ordered quietly. But the hardliners weren't done. 3 ships broke formation, weapons hot, rogue elements refusing to stand down. They fired everything they had at the planet's surface. The dragons moved faster than physics should allow. Frost created ice walls. Cinder's fire consumed incoming projectiles. Flint flew directly into the path of the largest blast, his own body becoming a shield. The plasma hit Flint full on. The dragon tumbled from the sky. Reed's heart stopped. Flint. But Cinder was already there, diving and catching Flint before he hit the ice. The dark dragon was hurt but alive, scales scorched but healing already. Dragon resilience was remarkable. The galaxy had seen enough. In the civilian ships, people screamed their outrage. On 100 worlds, citizens poured into the streets demanding justice. Even some council members began transmitting statements of condemnation. The 3 rogue ships found themselves surrounded by both civilian vessels and their own former allies. Crews that had been following orders minutes ago now refused to fire on dragons that had chosen mercy over violence. Dr. Hayes appeared on Reed's screen. "It's over. The rogue ships are standing down. Fleet Command has ordered a full withdrawal. The Council is calling an emergency session. Reed, you did it. You actually did it." Reed didn't answer. He was already running toward the surface, toward where Cinder had landed with Flint. The dragon looked up as Reed reached them. Burned and battered, Flint still managed a sound like relief. "You magnificent idiot," Reed said, his voice breaking. "I told you to defend, not throw yourself in front of plasma fire." Flint touched his nose to Reed's chest. Protection went both ways. Above them, the fleet was dispersing. The galaxy had chosen, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to start change. 6 months later, Reed stood on the ridge above what used to be his small mining bunker and watched the sunset paint the ice fields in colors that had no names. The bunker was gone now, replaced by a proper facility. Housing for the dozen volunteers who'd come to help. Research labs for scientists studying dragon history. Landing pads for the steady stream of diplomatic visitors. Frost 7 had become the most important planet in the galaxy almost overnight. Flint landed beside Reed with barely a sound despite his massive size. The dragon had fully healed from the plasma burns, growing even larger and stronger. His dark scales gleamed in the fading light. "How many today?" Reed asked. Flint made a series of sounds. Reed had learned to understand the complex vocalizations. 15 hatchlings from the eggs they'd found in other parts of the planet. All healthy, all bonding well with their assigned caretakers. It turned out Frost 7 had been a dragon nesting world thousands of years ago. Dozens of eggs had been preserved in the ice, waiting. Now they were hatching, one by one, into a galaxy very different from the one their parents had known. Cinder and Frost flew overhead, leading a group of younger dragons in formation practice. The hatchlings followed clumsily, but enthusiastically. Teaching the young ones to fly had become a daily routine. Dr. Hayes approached from the main facility. She'd resigned from council service and now coordinated the research teams studying dragon culture. Turned out she was brilliant at it. The council voted, she announced. Sentient species protection laws passed. Every civilization gets the same rights regardless of physical power or historical fear. Dragons are officially recognized as sapient beings with full legal standing. Reed allowed himself a smile. About time. There's more. They found dragon eggs on 14 other worlds, all in protected stasis. We're estimating over 200 viable eggs total. 200 dragons, a species brought back from extinction by accident and determination. Reed thought about the holographic dragon in the ancient city, the one who'd left a message hoping someone would choose differently. We chose differently, Reed said softly. A small dragon, barely 3 months old, tumbled out of the facility entrance. His scales were bright blue and he was still learning to walk properly. He spotted Reed and made excited noises, half running and half flying over. This was Storm, one of the first hatchlings Reed had personally helped raise. The little dragon crashed into Reed's legs and made demanding sounds. Hungry again? Reed laughed. You're always hungry. Storm made affirmative noises. Flint made a sound like amused agreement and took off toward the hunting grounds. Several other adult dragons joined him. They'd bring back enough food for all the hatchlings. Reed picked up Storm, who was still small enough to carry. The dragon settled against his chest and made contented purring sounds. Mr. Callahan, you have visitors, one of the volunteers called from the facility. Reed turned to see a ship landing on the pad. Official council markings, but this one carried diplomats instead of soldiers. Representative Dov emerged first, followed by several other species representatives. Reed, Dov greeted him warmly. We've come with a proposal. They gathered in the main meeting room. Storm refused to leave Reed's arms, so the dragon stayed, watching the proceedings with intelligent eyes. The council wants to formally apologize, Dov began. For the genocide, for the lies, for trying to kill you and the dragons. We're establishing a truth commission to investigate other historical narratives that might be similarly distorted. Good start, Reed said carefully. What else? Another representative spoke up. We want to offer you a position, official guardian of dragon welfare. You'd have authority to oversee all dragon sanctuaries, approve caretaker training, and ensure the species is protected. Reed looked down at Storm. The little dragon had fallen asleep against his chest. I'm not qualified for that. I'm just a miner who got lucky. You're a human who looked at the galaxy's most feared predator and saw a child who needed help, Dov corrected. That's exactly the qualification we need. The dragons trust you. The people trust you. We need that trust to rebuild. Through the window, Reed could see Flint returning with the hunting party. Cinder and Frost were teaching the young ones to land properly. The facility was full of life and hope and second chances. I'll do it, Reed said. On one condition, the dragons get final say in all decisions about their future. We're not their owners, we're their partners. The representatives exchanged glances and nodded. Agreed, Dov said. Over the following months, sanctuaries opened across the galaxy. Carefully selected volunteers trained to work with dragons. The ancient cities were excavated, revealing technologies and philosophies that would take decades to fully understand. And the dragons thrived. They learned languages and sciences. Some chose to explore the galaxy. Others preferred to stay on the sanctuary worlds, building new communities. A few joined the diplomatic corps, representing their species in council chambers. The galaxy learned what the ancient dragons had known all along. Power meant nothing without wisdom. Strength had no value without compassion. Reed watched it all happen from Frost 7, which had been renamed Haven, the first and most important dragon sanctuary, where 3 eggs had hatched in the snow and changed everything. Flint landed beside him on the ridge, now full-grown and magnificent. Cinder and Frost joined them, the 3 original dragons and the human who'd refused to let them die. "Think we did all right?" Reed asked. Flint made a sound like peaceful agreement. They'd done more than all right. They'd proven that the cycle could be broken, that fear could be overcome, that different species could choose understanding over violence. The sun set completely and the stars came out, billions of them, lighting up the darkness. Somewhere out there, dragon hatchlings were being born into a galaxy that finally welcomed them home. And in the ice and snow of Haven, a former miner stood with 3 dragons and knew he'd found something more valuable than any mineral deposit. He'd found family. He'd found hope. He'd found proof that one person choosing compassion over fear could change the entire galaxy. The dragons made contented sounds as night fell. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more eggs to find, more young ones to teach, more work building the future. But tonight, under the stars of Haven, everything was exactly as it should be. 1 human, 3 dragons, and a galaxy learning to be better.